Hey, everybody. It's Sunday, September 1st, 2024. Welcome to another edition of Montreal Hockey Talk. I am Coach. And before we get started, I want to remind everybody to go out onto social media and follow all of our accounts, whether it's on X, Instagram, YouTube, especially YouTube, and make sure you look for Montreal Hockey Talk so you can get the latest and greatest. And while we're on the subject, please don't forget to go out and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you like our videos, subscribe, and click the notification button so that this way you get the next best thing as far as news and notes from the National Hockey League and from Montreal Hockey Talk. Now, in this episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about who I think the number one goaltender should be for the Montreal Canadiens. And sure, you can say what you want. It's Sam Montembault. I disagree, and I don't want it to be, and I'll plead my case to you today. Above and beyond that, we'll look at the depth in goal for the Montreal Canadiens and how much healthier the organization is from a goaltending perspective, because last week I brought up Jeremy Swayman and the possibility of the Canadiens signing him to an offer sheet, and Habs Nation lost their mind. There's a little bit of strategy that was involved with that, so I will talk about it, but do we really have to go that direction? I looked at the numbers and I don't think so, especially not after what I heard last week, so we'll get to that in a bit. Then I'll take a look at the last pairing on the Montreal Canadiens defense. Is it really what people expect it to be? And should it be some other guys on the back end? I think that the last pairing on D isn't as obvious as some people think. So we'll discuss. I'm also going to talk about a comment that came across the YouTube channel. I'm not going to name the person that it came from, but it's a little antiquated. So the idea of blaming the goaltenders for the lack of productivity from the defense or their ability to get the puck out of the zone, I think, is nauseating and unfair. So I'm going to address that and actually show you why you're wrong. And then finally, we'll talk about the accident that took the life of both Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. Now, let's get into the whole crux of the matter and start talking about our goaltenders in Montreal, because after the season he had last year, Sam Montembault was pretty much anointed the number one goaltender in Montreal, and I totally disagree. I mean, his numbers on a team that was really bad were decent. 41 games played, 16, 15, and 9 record, 3.14 goals against, 903 save percentage. They were reasonable. But his 3-year average is 40 games played, 4 games below 500 as far as his record is concerned, a 338 goals against, and a save percentage sub 900 at 898. So why is he number one? Why is everybody saying that he's number one? I mean, if you take a look at Primo since he started with the Montreal Canadiens, his development arc, and I always talk about it, going upwards and upwards and making sure you maintain that arc, he's been getting better progressively as the seasons have gone along. I mean, you look at the 2 campaigns he played prior to last year in the American Hockey League, including 14 playoff games. And in those 14 games, he carried the Laval Rockets through the playoffs, and he was the reason why they got to the conference final. And then he comes in last year, the third man in a horrible goaltending situation, one that nobody wants to be in. And the only reason he was there is to make sure that he wasn't claimed off of waivers out of camp. So he played, 2 or 3 games prior to Christmas? And then the majority of his games came after the trade of Jake Allen. Not really fair for him, but you look at his numbers, 23 games played overall, 299 goals against, and a 910 save percentage. Nothing to scoff at as far as goaltending is concerned. And while he had 2 shutouts, Montembault only has 1, and that dates back to the 2021-2022 season. And if you look at the goaltending, Primo is a much more technically sound goaltender than Sam Montembault. When you look at their movements upper body-wise, blocker and glove, they're very close, very comparable between the two of them, and there's nothing to be said there. But when you look at their leg work and their pad work, oftentimes Montembault goes side to side, or laterally, as we say, and his knees come up off the ice, thus opening up the space under his pad. That pad's got to be flush when you're sliding across on the ice in the butterfly. And a few times I've seen him actually catch the edge of his blade in the ice as he's trying to slide. And so it's become a little bit of a problem. I mean, if you take a look at some of the replays and some of the highlights, you actually see the puck get stuck under his pad. And that's not something that happens to Caden Primo. His pad is flush on the ice, and it allows him to better control his rebounds. So the technical side of things, I give a little bit of an advantage over to Caden Primo. And personally, I'd like to see Primo get more time. I mean, yes, he got 23 games, and he should get more time between the pipes this year. Granted, he got only 23 last year. I think it should be split down the middle. This shouldn't be a 1-2 goaltending tandem. It should be a 1A, 1B. Because at the end of the day, I think both goaltenders are very comparable, and I think this is the season that we're actually going to see Primo take on a heavier workload and develop even further as far as his goaltending is concerned. So he deserves another look. And especially after you put him through that whole situation last year, I think he deserves to get a better look. And granted, the Canadiens' decor is very young, so they're going to be prone to their mistakes. But isn't the goalie's job to stop the puck? I mean, it's just as simple as that. Just one job, stop the puck. It doesn't matter who the shooter is. It doesn't matter if it's a wrist shot or slap shot. It doesn't matter if it's going high, low, the angle, where it's coming from. It's all about stopping the puck. That's it. Making sure that 3-inch frozen piece of rubber doesn't get past you and into the net. I mean, the puck's indifferent. It doesn't care. So it's one very simple job and one very simple equation. One very well-protected human against 3-inch piece of rubber. Who wins most of the time? The goaltender does, but their job is to stop it, right? So stop saying that, the defense has to do better. The goalie's job is always to stop the puck no matter what. It doesn't matter who the D is in front of him. A better D means that he has an easier job stopping the puck, but it doesn't change the job. So give Primo more looks, because after all, in my mind, and you may disagree and put it in the comments if you do, I think that Primo is going to be the future of goaltending in Montreal along with Jacob Fowler. And I don't foresee Montembault being in the picture. Now, speaking of Montembault not being in the picture, let's take a little bit of a look at the Habs depth in goal. If you remember, 14 years ago, back in 2010, the Canadiens got to the conference final on the back of Jaroslav Halak. What was the situation back then? Yarrow was supposed to be the backup to Carey Price. Carey Price was supposed to shoulder the load for Montreal, but he couldn't cut the mustard that year. Yarrow had a better season, better numbers, better performance. So they did everything they could and put everything on his back, and they got to the conference final. And so that there showed the depth, because Yarrow the year before was the AHL goaltender. It's the same situation as you see now with Montembault and Primo, except obviously Montembault is not Price. So there was a little bit of depth there in the organization, and then they had some goaltending back then. I believe it was the Hamilton Bulldogs. They had depth. So they had other options as well. And if you look at the Montreal Canadiens and their depth, and this chart shows you the 6 goaltenders who are in the system right now, beyond just Montembault and Primo, you look at Emmett Croteau from Alberta, Jacob Dobza from the Czech Republic, Jake Fowler, who I just mentioned, who plays at Boston College, Quentin Miller, who I believe still has one more year at junior before he does go to the American Hockey League. Then Evgeny Volokin from Russia, who's only 19 years old, and he's still got room to develop. And Joe Verbatic, who's 6'6" and 198 pounds. And there's a lot of depth there, and it's something the Canadiens haven't had for quite some time. One of the problems that we had with the Marc Bergevin era here in Montreal was that everything was about Carey Price. So long as Price was able to play, the backup goaltending position wasn't something they really thought about. You take a look at, some of the goaltenders that have come through the American Hockey League, whether it's Charlie Lindgren, who's now between the pipes in Washington, or, what happened with Jose Theodore once Carey Price was actually drafted and stuff like that. I mean, they made decisions and they got rid of goaltenders that, in Jose Theodore's case, his game had dwindled a little bit and he wasn't as good and he was overpriced. So, I get it. But in the case of Lindgren was a good goaltender who, again, didn't get a shot because of the fact that Carey Price was here. Now that Carey Price is gone, it opens up the door for some of the goaltenders to actually develop their craft and take over the number 1 and number 2 positions in Montreal. There's a fight for it right now, as far as I'm concerned, between Primo and Montembault, and I think there's a fight on the development arc in the minor leagues as well. I mean, everybody's talking about Volokin and Fowler being the next 2, and that may very well be the case. But Quentin Miller is a very solid young goaltender as well. And when you look at Verbatic, his size alone is reason enough to keep an eye on him and make sure he develops properly. So there's a lot of depth when it comes to goaltending in Montreal, something that we haven't had, and it's kind of at the same level as the D. And right now our prospect pool, according to most, is between 2 and 6 as far as the National Hockey League is concerned. And that's a level we haven't been at in over a decade. And again, why? Marc Bergevin didn't put a lot of credence into drafting quality players. He looked more along the lines of getting free agents and signing guys that were at the tail end of their careers to try to get the best out of them. That's how we got to the Cup final in 2021. It was on the back of character, not talent. So now that the organization has depth, we can move forward and say, you know what? Hey, awesome. Now the job is for them to develop that depth the same way they did with the D and make sure that the Canadiens are as strong between the pipes as they are in front of the pipes. Now, we get to the real crux of today's episode, and that is who's the last D pairing. A lot of the pundits out there believe it's going to be Arber Xhekaj and Justin Barron. I'm not there, and especially not when it comes to Barron. And I'll prove my point in a second. But Arber Xhekaj, I mean, you take a look at Xhekaj, and you hear on the highlights, he takes a clapper and scores as he steps into one. But right there is what he's got as far as offensive ability. You take a look at anything else, I mean, he can't carry the puck up the ice. He's not going to be that guy that's going to go end to end and get you out of your seat with an end-to-end rush or pinch and create offense a la Andre Markov. He's going to be the guy who's going to get you out of your seat when he drops the mitts or he lays a big hit like he did just there on screen. That's what Arber Xhekaj's job is. It's not to create offense. So is he really going to be your bottom pairing defenseman? I mean, fighting isn't really part of the National Hockey League anymore, is it? Sure, it's occasionally an issue when you've got a guy like Ryan Reeves on the ice from the Toronto Maple Leafs or a Nick Delorier from the Philadelphia Flyers. But at the end of the day, you want your defenseman to be able to play. And that's not to say that Arber Xhekaj can't. But there are other options that can play better. And when you're looking at somebody to scrap, you could always put in a Michael Pezzetta to be that guy. But, and with that argument, I don't think Pezzetta is going to be part of the opening day 13 forwards for the Montreal Canadiens. I honestly think he's going to be on the outside looking in because of all the depth that we have now at the forward position. But needless to say, Arber Xhekaj is a one-trick pony. He's got a big bomb. He's physical and he can scrap. So is he really the guy you want on your bottom pairing? Or is it this guy, Jaden Struble? I mean, Jaden is the only defenseman I could find that didn't have an NHL highlight package, despite the fact that he did play quite a bit at the end of the season. But that's another story for another day. But he's more along the lines of the mold of the defenseman that the Canadiens are looking for. He's that guy who's able to evade forecheckers and, skate extremely well, change direction on a whim. He can be physical when he needs to be, and he's shown a propensity to have a mean streak. He'll occasionally drop the gloves too when he gets pissed off. So isn't he really a better option? I mean, he struggled mightily at the end of the year last year, but who didn't for the Montreal Canadiens because they played like crap? So what do you think? Struble or Xhekaj? When I put the pros and cons together, my winner is Jaden Struble. I think Struble gets the nod on the left side of the D on that third pairing because of the fact that he's a stronger skater and he brings a more overall game. I mean, again, one-trick pony. It's like, again, I'm going to mention him again despite the fact that nobody wants me to. Ryan Reeves in Toronto. Do you expect Ryan Reeves to score goals? Do you expect Ryan Reeves to create offense? No. You expect Ryan Reeves to go in there, lay the body, and smash some people. That's kind of what people are expecting from Arber Xhekaj with a little bit of offense sprinkled in here and there. But, that's not what we want from our defensemen in Montreal because, after all, what we want is a better offensive team. And in talking about better offense, let's take a look at the right side of the D, starting with Logan Mailloux. Now, Logan is the type of guy, as you see here from the AHL, who's got that big bomb from the blue line. I mean, he put up 47 points in 72 games last year, which was his only AHL campaign, so it's nothing to scoff at. And previous to that, he was a leader on the D-Corps for the London Knights of the OHL. So one of the things that Mailloux did was he missed a lot of time because of his suspension, because of his indiscretions. But, he's got a cannon of a shot. He's got a mean streak. He's nasty in front of his own net. So he can really be a replacement for Shea Weber. And the Canadiens miss Shea Weber. Not just his physicality and leadership, but they miss that bomb from the blue line. We don't have it right now. Granted, Xhekaj does have one from the left side, but his ability to launch it is few and far between. Mailloux shows a propensity to get open and be able to launch it, and he's got that view of the net where he's not shy to shoot and just make sure that puck gets on goal. The other thing about him is that he's a nasty trade partner in front of the net, and he likes to really get that stick into your back and really jab it in there like Weber did. So that's why people wouldn't go in front of the net when Weber was on the ice. So Logan Mailloux or David Reinbacher. Now, Reinbacher was on the outside looking in. He's the biggest wild card right now. He played a handful of games at the AHL level and looked pretty good. And despite his small sample size, he performed well. He was strong defensively, and his skill was highlighted by his ability to provide some offense as well from the blue line. The other thing about Reinbacher is that reports have him getting bigger now in the Olympic qualifiers. So he's starting to become more physical. And the one thing I admired about him was the fact that he can close the gap rather quickly, and he's very good at using his stick to angle players towards the boards and then rub them out along the boards with his body. It's a skill that you don't see very often anymore from players because they're worried about taking penalties. And Reinbacher has shown that he's very, very good at doing it without taking penalties. So he's got a lot of quality as far as that's concerned. The one downside is that he's still young. He really hasn't shown much as far as North American ice is concerned. And by and large, Logan Mailloux is once again on a better development arc right now than Reinbacher. It remains to be seen what happens at camp this year because Reinbacher is going to come in wanting that number 6 or number 5 job, whatever number you want to give to that last pairing, and he's going to fight hard to get it. But you still got one more option on the back end as well, and that's Justin Barron. Now, Justin Barron, who you see here putzing around to start the highlight clip, I mean, Barron's the only guy from this list who's got a 2-way contract at the NHL level, right? Reinbacher, of course, in his entry level. So is Logan Mailloux. Barron's is a 2-way contract. And the thing about Barron is that offensively, there's no doubt that he's got talent. Offensively, there's no argument. 5 goals last season, generating offense, being able to come down on the rush and pinch. But the thing about Barron is that defensively, he's a sieve. He tends to give the puck away because he doesn't have self-confidence with the puck. He's got no poise. And that's something he's got to work on. I mean, I'm not willing to put the number 6 guy out there. And oftentimes you see it, the number 5 and 6D end up out there against the first line because of line changes on the road. And so they got caught in awkward situations. That's where we give up a lot of goals. And so if you put Barron out there and he's hesitant with the puck in our own zone, chances are that the other team is going to get quality scoring chances. So given that, I really don't want to put him out there, and I don't think he's going to be even the number 7 defenseman. I think he's going to start the season at the American Hockey League level. Who gets the nod on D for Montreal to finish off that last pairing? For me, to start the season, it's going to be Logan Mailloux. I think there's no question about it in my mind. I don't think it's going to be Barron. And then I think Reinbacher is going to push up from the American Hockey League, and he's going to try to take over. And given that fact, Mailloux's going to have to make sure his game stays on par and solid so that Reinbacher doesn't take over. Because I think the minute that Logan Mailloux shows that his game is faltering, that switch is going to flip-flop, and we're going to see Mailloux go back to the AHL and Reinbacher get called up to take his spot. Barron is going to be the guy on the outside looking in. So at the end of the day, it's going to be Jaden Struble and Logan Mailloux. And also bear in mind that those 2 guys did play together in the American Hockey League as well. So that's something to think about. Now, getting to the comments on YouTube. I'm not going to mention names here because I really don't want to throw anybody personally under the bus because you're all entitled to your opinion, and I appreciate it no matter what. But the one thing I didn't like about the comment is that goaltenders were being blamed for the ability for the defense to get the puck out of the zone. And there are things that have changed since that comment actually had valor, because the comment 15 years ago would have been right. You know, granted, you know, Marty Turco and Martin Brodeur were very good at playing the puck, among the best in NHL history. And you can add Ron Hextall to that list. Patrick Waugh was a very good puck-playing goaltender. The list goes on and on. But things have changed. In the time that Brodeur and Turco actually played, there was no trapezoid behind the net. So the goaltenders had the ability to go to the corner and get the puck if they could. Or they could actually wait for it to come in behind the net, skate it a little bit to one side or the other, and then make a pass. They can't do that anymore. They can't come outside the trapezoid, so it really limits their ability to be able to play the puck. Granted, there are some goalies like Mike Smith who, were able to play the puck. And so it really, really, really limits their ability to help the D. You talked about, in the comment, you talked about the third defenseman. That third defenseman doesn't really exist anymore. The league took it away by implementing the trapezoid so that they could augment the offense. And teams have gotten smart. As opposed to rimming the puck hard around the boards behind the net, now what they do is they dump it softly into a corner where their goaltender can't come out and play it, and they put the D in a position. Those same positions that I talked about just a second ago in regards to Justin Barron not being able to look over his shoulder, make sure that there's nobody bearing down on him and move the puck quickly. So it's not the goaltender's job, like I said, to play the puck. His job is to stop it. It's the D's job to go and get the puck. And so the D have to be faster in puck retrieval, and they have to recognize what the offending team is going to be doing, right? So the D gets the puck, and they do their job for the most part. They get the puck, they look up ice, they try to see what their options are. And more often than not, they do get the puck out. But the times that they don't, it's not because they don't have the ability, it's because they don't have the options. And yeah, we've seen it a lot with the Montreal Canadiens. It's something I hate, where they flip the puck out of the zone and they loop it out into the neutral zone. I hate that when it comes to defensemen. I think it's just giving away the puck and allowing the other team to regroup and come back at you full force. At the end of the day, it's the forwards, and specifically the wingers, that are the problem. The centers, you see them all the time. Deep in the zone, they're supporting the D and helping them get the puck out. So what happens is the D will either give the puck up put the puck off the glass, or a short little pass to the centerman who will look up ice. And what does he do? You see that stretch pass. It's always a stretch pass. It's never a short, quick pass to a winger that's close by, right? When the puck comes up the boards, and we'll call that the strong side for reference, you need to have a winger on that strong side so that the center has a closer option to be able to get the puck out of the zone. The minute the center gets the puck, he's got two options, or three actually. He can return the puck back to the defenseman, which is something you don't want to see most of the time when you're coming out of your zone. He can move it to the winger, or he can move it on the strong side, or you can move it to the winger on the weak side, who normally is the guy who's supposed to jump the zone quickly. But in Montreal's case, you're seeing both forwards jump the zone too quick. And so that creates a larger gap and a propensity to give away the puck. Those passing lanes aren't always there. Teams are so good at forechecking right now, those passing lanes close up very quickly. And the only time you really see them is when teams make mistakes, whether it's on a line change or whether it's because they miss the coverage and don't see the guy behind them. That's when it happens. So it's not something you can depend on. What you can depend on is proper structure when you're coming out of your zone, and that starts with your defenseman moving the puck up the strong side, the center being there in support, and your strong side winger being another option, instead of putting it off the glass and out and again giving away the puck. So getting back to that comment, it's not fair to blame the goaltenders for something that's out of their hands. Their job, stop the puck. If they can play the puck, great. If they can't play the puck, doesn't matter. Because more often than not, the only thing the goaltender can do, especially on a hard rim around the boards, is come out and stop it behind the net. Then you see the defenseman or forward come in and pick it up. So if that's it that we expect from our goaltenders, then the structure has to be there to be able to support the D, to be able to get the puck out. That's the way it works. And it's puck out, zone entry good, offense on the move. So, and it all flows one to the other. So if your zone exits are no good, your zone entries are going to be just as bad, because when you come out clustered and you come out together and you have that strong side winger and you have that centerman who's right in the middle in support, then they come out together, the third weak side winger comes to join, and you're attacking as a group, and the zone entry becomes a lot easier. You can crisscross, you can drop pass, there's all kinds of different things you can do. But when you stretch, it's 1 versus 2 or 3, depending on who's back for the defending team. So don't blame the goalies for the zone exits. The zone exits and a breakout, it starts with the D, but the biggest culprits on the Montreal Canadiens right now are the forwards. They need to fix it up so that the forwards stay back and support. Now, finally, I need to say my 2 cents on the situation with Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. It's heartbreaking for a couple of reasons. But let's start with the guy that did this. And yeah, do I think he's a piece of garbage? Absolutely. But what he did as far as drinking and driving is concerned, a lot of us did, especially when we were younger and stupid. Granted, he's a little bit older, but we're all guilty of it. We all went out with our friends. We all thought, yeah, I can handle my liquor, I can drive. And we got lucky enough that something like this didn't happen to us. This guy had it happen to him. But along with the liquor in his system came a measure of impatience because from reports, he tried to pass the car in front of him through the turning lane and then decided to cut to the right, which we all know is not the way you're supposed to drive. In fact, it's illegal to pass on the right. And who was there? Matthew and Johnny Gaudreau. Invisible to him, but that's still not an excuse. And he's destroyed not just the Gaudreau family, but he's destroyed his own family as well. So the way the equation works in my head, and it's so sad to think of it this way, but I do, it's really $40 of booze for 2 lives. Because after all, he said he had about 6 beers. It's about what, $40? It's just so sad. And for Meredith and Johnny's 2 kids, and Katie, Matthew, and Johnny's sister, who was supposed to get married the next day, I mean, I can't even begin to think of what she's feeling. So my heart goes out to everybody involved. My heart goes out, and my condolences go out to the entire Gaudreau family. 31 years old is way too young. And, you know, in the words of Ferris Bueller, always remember, life moves pretty fast. If you blink, you might miss it. That's it for today. See you next week.